So, Mr. Abinav Rao, what was a moment during your visit to Anantapur that made you realize that small farmers were being excluded from carbon markets, and how did that inspire EcoHex?
So when I visited Anantapur, it was one of the second driest drought districts in India, and when I went there, I realized that they are doing amazing sustainability practices. They have a ton of crops. They have tons of just sustainable development that they're doing. A ton of land management too, and in fact, that was sequestering carbon. So they were actually doing something really good for the environment, do the really large scale agricultural use, but they were not able to access the carbon markets. They were not able to liquidate any possibilities or any sort of money from the actual money from the carbon credit markets. So that's when I realized that EcoHex could be I got an idea for EcoHex, saying we could be some sort of platform that helps these customers or these farmers access these markets. The traditional tools are very expensive, soil testing, A&B testing. They're really, really expensive, so I thought maybe you can use some sort of data science tool.
Thank you. For the next question, can you briefly explain how your AI model works in simple terms, especially for the farmers who might not have any technical background?
Yeah. So pretty much how do you estimate carbon credits? That's you take the soil type, you take this crop type, you take the number of crops, tons of data up just about the farmland, and then you try to predict how much carbon dioxide each of them will absorb in a year, and then you convert it to carbon credits. So usually we have like seven, eight, or I think in large scale farmlands, 11 or 12 tools doing this. So what this data science model does is that though we already have all this data about all these farmlands, we can predict, given, let's say we have data about one specific farmland. Maybe we have certain characteristics saying our farmland has the same type of crop, but it's a smaller area. We can obviously cut down by that half, and we can estimate. So these kinds of heuristics and estimations will be done on a larger scale with a lot more factors. And the ML model that I built was pretty much trying to predict this to as accurately as you possibly can.
Thank you. How did you ensure that EcoHex remain accessible to small farmers without relying on expensive technology?
So it was a web app interface, so they can use their smartphones, which most of them have. They can log into the platform. They can have their own user account, similar to how you use Gmail or any other simple service. And there they can enter their farmland data. So most of them know what type of crop they're cultivating, the acreage. So all the data that we can possibly get from them in a very accessible format. It's a simple form, and also with tons of translation services. We did Telugu, we did Marathi, we did tons of services where we made sure that they can understand it really intuitively. And then using all that data, we used the data we needed, let's say geospatial data or temperature data, weather data. They don't know that. So we inferred based on geolocation. So most of the data was already there, or I inferred it from just using their location, and a lot more inference that was gone behind this.
Thank you. What were some of the most surprising or eye-opening feedbacks that you received from farmers during the early field testing?
Actually, the first time I went there, they weren't interested at all, because they already had their own app. It's called My Khata, but from the government. They already have their application information. They don't know what carbon credit markets are, number one. So they don't really know that they can actually gain money from the fact that they're actually just planting crops. So that was my biggest shock they had. And number two was initially I was trying to explain the ML model, but obviously it's more really complicated. So I really boiled it down, saying this is what you get from this. This is what you can do if you just put it in your data. And if I connect it to your bank account or other services, which I'm working on right now, we can actually help you just liquidate the money. And that very clear. And number three is that instead of going for individual farmers in every plot, it's better to go for agriculture departments that have multiple, let's say 11 or 12 farmers under them that report to them. And they're more likely to trust you that way, because if you don't just come out the field, they have less trust about your product compared to from the government agriculture department.
Thank you. How did the advice from Revati Garu and other local partners shape the user interface and communication strategy of EcoHex?
Yeah, so a lot less numbers, more charts, because farmers don't really care about their numbers. They only care about really nice visualizations. So what I did was I pretty much made really nice pie charts and dashboards, so they can look at, they're saying, okay, year on year this is the yield I'm increasing, year on year this is the acreage that I'm increasing. So number one, visualization. Number two is obviously the language. Language is not my idea, in fact, because most of them don't know English or they're unfamiliar with it. So Telugu, Marathi, all these like local languages that I just simply translate it to, and that boosts conversion by this 20%. That a lot more people use the platform before. I mean, after this change.
Thank you. You have interacted with experts from AIM, TIE Hyderabad, and other incubators. What was the toughest question or challenge you faced from them, and how did you overcome it?
Well, most of them were skeptical about the market size because there's already a carbon credit market. It's going, I think, 20% year on year, $15 billion market. And then there already are big players, like big farmlands. Think of like the farmlands that supply a grocery market or supermarket. So their biggest concern was that, number one, will these small farmers that you're targeting, though they're 80% of the entire population, it makes sense that you're missing out on them, but will they actually convert? Will they actually use your platform? Or is it just going to be like one tool for them to gain extra money? Like, will they actually participate in the market, or will they just get the money? Because we want participation for just increased GDP growth, and also that's the biggest market there is for possible to them. And that's my biggest question they asked. And then I was also skeptical, but then I think if you scale it to, or make it more intuitive, make it really scalable and integrated with government platforms, we have a very good shot to at least bring half of them over, because all of them already have every paperwork, everything. We just need to make them digitized and bring India to like a bigger carbon economy than it is right now.
Okay, the next question is, you have okay, finish this question. Okay, the next question is, as a young innovator, how do you manage to balance the technical development, the field deployment, and gaining institutional support?
I mean, there's obviously steps to it. So first, you obviously build the product, then you go to field support and get users, and then most of the time you're stuck in a loop because sometimes you don't really like your product and you realize there's this feature I want, I should pivot to this idea. Do that a couple of times, and then once you're confident, or once the users are confident they'll actually use your platform, then you go and go to investors and institutional investors or any grant funding, and they'll be more than happy to help. I think that's like what I did and what's also standard in the industry.
So what is your plan for integrating blockchain into EcoHex, and how do you see that changing the game for small farmers in the carbon market?
So right now, carbon verification is one thing. So I said we use our ML models to predict how much carbon they're getting, right? But then obviously we need a stamp of approval for them to actually trade the market, because anyone can come and claim, and I have 2,000 trees, but then if I look at your farm, like maybe you have 200, you might be lying, right? So that verification is the biggest process, and blockchain can help with that. So blockchain is just a decentralized compute system. So instead of going to a central authority, like all these farmers cannot access there's only one or two centers around India that can do this. So what we can do is that we can make sure, number one, that our carbon ML sequestration models are actually accurate, and that we're working on it right now. So we're getting certifications. Once we do that, blockchain can be easily used for farmers to get their money. So if you assume we sell a token to them, a different currency, let's say one carbon credit in our own system, they can automatically go to the bank or any other thing online or any digital like payment system online, and they can convert to money right then and there. Instead of going to think of real estate, or you gotta sign agreements, 2-3 month process, you gotta get money from the bank and this and that. Instead of that, blockchain is one of the fastest ways if you can prove that you can actually do the carbon credit sequestration, and that's one of the biggest sort of barriers to blockchain development. So that's what we're working on right now.
Okay, thank you. How do you envision taking EcoHex from regional solution to national or even a global level platform?
I think right now we have enough baseline technology to deploy it to a lot more farmlands. And the biggest problem we have right now is India does not have a lot of data. So compared to the US or any other markets, you have a lot of farmland data to work on. And the biggest caveat of ML models is that you need more data for it to be accurate. So now we obviously need to, number one, go and just go to market, try to get more users, way more diversity of users, try to train an ML model to a point where it's enough, that it's actually accurate enough. And then It's more about using blockchain or connecting the governments, which most of the contacts I do have. So right now the biggest, I guess, barrier is just the carbon verification, and that's what we're working on right now.
So what has been your biggest personal takeaway from this journey so far, and how has this experience shaped your outlook on innovation and community impact?
I think it's that everything that looks really impossible and really hard at the start, just taking small steps and make sure that you're actually improving each step. So first step is obviously learn to code or learn to how to build applications. Number two is knowing your users really well. Like that helps out a lot. And those are like my biggest takeaways. That you gotta master the basics before you go and solve $1 billion problem. You also have to have like amazing steps and amazing solutions that you need to just implement. Number one, you can just go and I think you just can't go into the hard problem because you will fail all the time. You gotta have your own steps to sort of mitigate that.
So what would be your advice to other student innovators who want to solve community problems but don't know where to start?
I think the biggest advice I'd give is just go out on the field. Actually go out in the field and talk to your users, because oftentimes there's a lot more problems that can be solved, and pick the problem you think you can't solve. So there's tons of problems that, if a farmer complains about subsidies, it's a problem you can solve. It's a problem government can solve. So you got to think creatively. Number one, you got to think creatively on how to solve the existing solutions. Number two is you got to figure out that whether you can actually do this or whether it's better for someone else to do it. So founder market fit is also pretty important. Like if you're like a mechanical engineering student, let's say, and you really know how to build motors and systems like that, you rather stick to helping farmers build motor pumps than electrical circuits. Does that make sense? So pick your field of interest, pick your field where you can specialize in and help people, and just go talk to users. And more often than not, luck will play on your side and a lot more opportunities will come your way.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.